It's 1914. A winter night settles over Switzerland. Carl Jung closes his study door and begins a conversation with the unknown. He picked up a notebook, a thick blank ledger with red leather binding. Then, without outline or diagnosis, he began to write. He wrote down dreams, spoke to figures in the walls, entered trance states, let images appear on their own. A winged man, a serpent, a temple in the desert. He wasn't hallucinating. He wasn't losing it. Not exactly. He was performing a ritual. The images weren't fiction. They were real to him, as real as gravity. He would later paint them, name them, debate with them, learn from them. One of them, Philemon, became his guide, a wise old man with wings and a beard, who appeared first in a dream, then again during a waking vision by the lake. Jung called Philemon his inner guru, not metaphorically. He said things I did not think, Jung wrote. And so the scientist did something unscientific. He listened. He built a relationship with these beings. Figures from the unconscious, yes, but also something older, something ancient. A hidden world was opening to him. Not metaphor, not madness. Something else. This wasn't analysis anymore. It was initiation. Carl Jung is often remembered as a thinker, a psychiatrist, a scientist, the man who gave us terms like introvert, archetype, complex, and collective unconscious. But what if that wasn't the whole story? What if Jung wasn't just studying the mind, but performing something far older? What if he was, quietly, a magician? Not the kind with cards and coin tricks, but the older kind, the Hermetic kind, the alchemist, working not with metals, but with the soul. Because Jung didn't just read alchemical texts, he practiced them, not symbolically, operatively. He entered altered states, dialogued with inner figures, trusted visions. He recorded dreams with the precision of ritual, drew mandalas like magical seals, and saw the psyche not as a machine, but as a mystery to be transmuted. He called this process individuation. But it echoes something older, the great work, the lifelong transformation of base matter into gold. Or in Jung's case, suffering into wholeness. In the old magical traditions, the true magician doesn't wear a title. He disguises the ritual as therapy, the invocation as introspection, the spirit as symbol. But if you read closely, through the red book, through the letters, through the subtle language of dreams, you begin to see it. Jung wasn't just analyzing the mind, he was communing with it. He wasn't just mapping the unconscious, he was walking through it. And what he found there, Philemon, the self, the shadow, the anima, weren't ideas. They were beings. And the work wasn't academic, it was sacred. Welcome to Mantis Library, where we trace the invisible architecture of meaning through shadow, myth, and the self. To most scholars, alchemy is a relic, an archaic blend of chemistry and mysticism, a failed attempt to turn lead into gold. To Jung, it was something else entirely. He spent decades poring over alchemical manuscripts, from the Rosarium Philosophorum to the writings of Zosimos of Panopolis, not because he believed in physical transmutation, but because he saw something hidden in their language, a map, a symbolic process, a psychology coded in smoke and fire. In Psychology and Alchemy, Jung wrote, "The alchemical opus deals with the transmutation of the psyche. It is the transformation of the personality." This was not allegory, it was ritual. For Jung, alchemy was the original psychology, a symbolic system for what he called individuation, the lifelong process of becoming whole. Lead becomes gold. Ego becomes self. The stages of the alchemical work, nigredo, albedo, citrinitas, rubedo, weren't about furnaces and flasks. They were about inner death and rebirth. First, the darkness, disintegration, the breakdown of identity. Then, the washing, clarity, renewal, insight. Then, illumination. Then finally, integration, wholeness, gold. It is the same path the magician walks, and the same path the analyst walks. Both guide a soul through descent, through shadow, contradiction, death of the false self, in search of something buried and eternal. The magician uses ritual, sigils, initiation. Jung used dream work, active imagination, and myth, but the structure was the same. A sacred chamber, a patient, a transformation. This is why Jung saw no contradiction between science and spirit, because at the deepest level he believed there is no split. Only symbol, only psyche, only the work. And what we call therapy today, the long, slow turning of inner chaos into order, Jung called the great work. Alchemy in disguise. Magic by another name. In 1913, Carl Jung sat down and let go. He had recently broken from Freud, was slipping into what he feared was madness, and found himself visited by strange visions, a blood-red sea, a flooded Europe, a bearded man with wings. Rather than suppressing them, Jung did the opposite. He wrote, he painted, he entered. This was not daydreaming. It was a deliberate descent. Jung called the method active imagination, but in practice, it was magical invocation. He would sit quietly, let the images arise, and speak to them, not as fantasies, but as autonomous beings. The most enduring of these was Philemon, a tall man with kingfisher wings and a white beard, who appeared one day in a dream and never left. Jung said, "Philemon represented a force which was not myself. He said things I had not consciously thought. He was a mysterious figure to me. He came with teachings, not just cryptic riddles, but revelations about the psyche, time, death, and the self. And he wasn't alone. There was also Salome, the blind priestess, Elijah, the wise old man, Ka, the serpent. They appeared in dialogue. They debated him, confronted him, guided him. Not as characters, presences. In magical tradition, these would have been called daemons, spirit intelligences that teach and initiate. In psychology, they might be called inner figures or archetypes. But Jung treated them as real, not in the empirical sense, but in the psychic sense. the only place they truly mattered to him. He spent years recording these encounters in what became the Red Book, a massive illustrated manuscript of visions, voices, and revelations. He never published it in his lifetime, not because it wasn't important, but because it was too important. This wasn't theory. This was ritual. Not metaphor, invocation. And in those quiet rooms beneath the surface of consciousness, Jung didn't study magic, he practiced it. To most people, a symbol is a decoration, a metaphor, a visual metaphor maybe. But for Jung, symbols were something else entirely. They were portals. He once wrote, "The symbol is the best possible expression for something unknown." Not unknown as in confusing, but unknown as in beyond language, beyond reason, something deeper than words could reach. Jung believed that when a symbol emerged, in a dream, in a myth, in a painting, it wasn't random. It was the psyche trying to speak, trying to reveal something that the conscious mind wasn't ready to face directly. That's why he spent years drawing mandalas, intricate circular diagrams, emerging spontaneously in his journals. He didn't design them. They came to him. He followed them. In magical traditions, this isn't unusual. Magicians create sigils, symbols infused with intent to transform inner and outer reality. They trace glyphs, burn incense, enter trance, all to interact with forces that are not entirely their own. Jung did the same, only he called it analysis. He interpreted dreams not to decode them rationally, but to engage with them symbolically. He studied myths and fairy tales, not as folklore, but as maps of inner transformation. The snake, the labyrinth, the dying god weren't stories. They were stages in a psychic ritual. Symbols, he said, are alive. They do not explain, they invoke. When someone brought him a dream with a black sun or a wounded king, Jung didn't treat it like a puzzle. He treated it like a ritual door. What did it open? What part of the soul was trying to speak? That was the work, not to solve the symbol, but to let it work on you. The magician cast a circle to enter sacred space. Jung drew a mandala for the same reason. Both knew you don't step through the symbol. The symbol steps through you. Most psychologists treat the mind like a machine. Inputs, outputs, neurons, behavior. Jung didn't. For him, the psyche wasn't made of thoughts or chemicals. It was made of images. Not fantasies, not metaphors, but real images with their own gravity. He believed the unconscious wasn't just a filing cabinet of repressed memories. It was a realm, a place alive with symbols, myths, and presences. He called it the collective unconscious, a deep layer of the psyche shared across cultures and time, filled with archetypes, the mother, the hero, the shadow, not invented by the mind, but discovered within it. This idea wasn't unique to Jung. Islamic mystics like Sher Hawadi called it the mundus imaginalis, the imaginal world. Henry Corbin, a scholar of Islamic philosophy, argued that the imaginal isn't imaginary. It's the third mode of reality. Not physical, not mental, but something else. Jung agreed. When he met figures like Philemon, he didn't think he was hallucinating. He believed he was entering the imaginal. where symbols become teachers, where myths become doors. He studied Gnosticism, alchemy, Kabbalah, astrology, not as hobbies, but as maps. They all pointed to the same terrain, an inner cosmos as structured and as alive as the outer one. Jung didn't abandon science, but he refused to stop where science stopped listening. His psychology wasn't just clinical, it was esoteric. He believed healing wasn't just about fixing the mind, it was about re-entering the myth, because the wound wasn't modern, it was ancient, and so was the cure. Carl Jung never called himself a magician. He never wore robes, never built temples. He wore a lab coat, carried notebooks, spoke in lectures and footnotes. But the work was magic. He invoked spirits, mapped the underworld, turned suffering into gold. He studied Hermetic texts, the Gnostics, the alchemists, not from distance, but from within, and yet he refused the spotlight. "Thank God I am Jung and not a Jungian," he once wrote, not out of pride, out of caution. He knew what happens when movements become dogmas, when ideas turn into identities. The real magician never stands at the front of the room. He disappears into the work. Like Hermes, cloaked as a traveller, Merlin hiding behind madness, Jung buried the wand beneath psychology. He wasn't interested in followers. He was interested in transformation. That's the paradox. The deeper the magic, the quieter the magician. And so, Carl Jung never claimed the title, because he didn't have to. He lived it. What if the real secret isn't that Jung was a magician, but that magic never left? Not card tricks, not spells, but transformation, transmutation, invocation. Long before we had therapists, we had priests and shamans, people who guided others through symbols, dreams, rituals, not to entertain, but to initiate. Jung didn't invent that tradition. He translated it. He replaced the altar with the analyst's chair, the ritual with active imagination, the sacred text with the psyche itself. He didn't wave a wand. He listened. He asked the unconscious to speak, and when it did, he wrote it down. He knew the archetypes don't care what century it is. The soul doesn't disappear just because science can't measure it. Magic never vanished, just changed its name. Jung didn't perform it, he lived it. And if you've ever had a dream that changed you, a symbol that stayed with you, a moment when the inner world felt more real than the outer, then you've already stepped into the circle, already seen the wand. We don't need to cast spells. We don't need wands, incense or sacred robes. But we might need to sit with a symbol that unsettles us, to sketch a dream we don't understand, to ask a question inward and wait, not for logic, but for something stranger. Jung never told us to believe in magic. He told us to take the psyche seriously, to stop pretending our inner world is random, or decorative, or childish. He said the dream is a message. The symptom is the story. The shadow isn't your enemy, it's your other half. Philemon may not knock on your window like he did for Jung, but there is a figure in you, waiting. A symbol that returns, a voice you keep hearing just before sleep. Jung didn't just teach psychology, he modeled a way of walking, not away from mystery, but toward it. Because the most dangerous thing isn't believing too much, it's believing nothing at all. If we lose the symbolic, we lose the soul. If we lose the soul, we wander. That's why Jung still matters. Not because he explained everything, but because he refused to explain it away. He left the door open. He handed us the map. Not to show us where he went, but to say, you can go too. The inner world isn't a metaphor, it's a terrain. And maybe, just maybe, the moment we take one step toward it, we've already begun the great work. And if you liked this video, make sure to like, share and subscribe. Until next time, stay curious, stay mindful, and never stop exploring. We'll see you again in Mantis Library.